welcome to A Work of Fiction. This is Hannah's book vlog. I'm an independent author as well as an avid reader, and I like to talk about my thoughts on things that I've been reading at the moment. My target for this year was to read one book a week instead of scrolling endlessly. So far so good, but I've found myself on a huge come down after reading Pet Sematary by Stephen King. So I do warn you, there will be spoilers in this video. So if you haven't read this book and if you haven't seen the films and you don't know what it's about, please look away now, because this is about the novel and we're going to do a deep dive into the themes, the characters, and what an impact it had. So first things first, I want to talk about the overarching themes in Pet Sematary. Now, I picked up this book not knowing what it was about. I'm amazed that I have lived as long as I have and have not seen a spoiler about Pet Sematary. I knew it had a cat in it, and that was about it. So I got this for Christmas because I wanted to read it. I've read quite a few Stephen King books, but I haven't read this one. And people talk about it. You know, it's an iconic film. It's an iconic book. It's one of his scariest, and I had no preconceptions. I knew it was a horror novel, and that was that. So sometimes dead is better. The house looks right, feels right to Dr. Louis Creed, rambling, old and comfortable. A place where the family can settle, the children grow and play and explore. The rolling hills and meadows of Maine seem a world away from the fume-choked dangers of the city. It's only those big trucks on the road outside which growl out unnerving threats. Behind the house, there's a carefully cleared path up into the woods to a place where generations of local children have walked in processions with the solemn innocence of the young, taking with them their dear departed pets for burial. A sad place maybe, but safe. Surely a safe place. Not a place to seep into your dreams, to wake you sweating with fear and foreboding. Well, this was one of those books that had me really interested to see what other people thought. I went and had a look on Goodreads to see what others said about it. I was really interested to see what others thought. And it was one of those books that I stopped reading it, put it down, and then couldn't read anything else. So I've been reading a book a week. This only took me about 3 days to read. So I'm not really behind on my target because I've spent the other 4 days just processing it. And it's a heavy read. But not for the reasons that you would think. So the overarching themes, nice big obvious one is death. Another one, denial. Paranoia versus premonition. Is it paranoia? Is it a premonition? Is it a vision? Is it a hallucination? Is it a dream? Is it a warning? You know, paranoia versus premonition is a huge theme. Parental anxiety is another one. And plans versus life. Okay? And I'll explain what I mean by those things. So, the parental anxiety, I read this for the first time as a parent. As you can see, I'm a parent of young kids because my house is a mess behind me. But if I was to spend all day clearing up Hot Wheels, I wouldn't get any writing done. So, you know, we have to compromise there. My youngest is a toddler. So it was quite hard for me to read a horror novel where the main characters have kids and the main characters have a toddler. But I did it anyway because it's fiction, it's not real, this doesn't happen in the real world. We'll talk about that as well. So, death, we have the Creed family, and they arrive in this new house in Maine. They're trying to escape the hustle and bustle of Chicago. Louis Creed has taken a job at a university hospital. The idea is that, okay, well, it's decent money, it's not as busy as working in the city, but we can set up a nice little life for ourselves here in small town North America. And, you know, so far so good. Sleepy little house, plenty of room for the kids to play. However, within minutes of meeting Judd Crandall, who's the neighbour across the road, we know that the road is dangerous. We are told that road there is dangerous, that the big trucks come speeding down there. Those big trucks are responsible for the death of many cats and dogs in the neighbourhood. We are told right from the get-go that road is dangerous, that road is fatal, those trucks are fatal. The Creed family do not have a fence at the front of the house, nor do they get one at any point in the book. Now, this is not me saying that's the Creed's fault, what happens, because busy working parents with little kids finding time to put up a fence, easier said than done. However, these are characters. This is a novel. Everything is there for a reason. We have been presented with the danger from the first 5 chapters, and we don't believe it. We will not accept it. And we join the characters in the game of denial. So, I kept reading. The road's dangerous. They've got little kids. It's all right. They're on top of it. Keep an eye on the kids. George Crandall then takes them to the Pet Sematary. He's like, hey kids, do you want to go and see this cool thing? This is where everyone buries their cats and dogs and hamsters and budgies and even ponies, whatever. You know, they come and bury their pets up there. Come and see. Come and see. It's cool. Kids are morbid. Kids ask morbid questions. I have been asked countless times about death, how it all works. Where do people go? Oh, is grandma dead now? Is grandma going to be dead forever? Or is she coming back? You know, kids love processing this. They are currently processing their own existence in the universe, and death to them is fascinating. And, you know, you've got pet death, and are they going to heaven? What's in heaven? What's it like? And the kids, you know, Ellie, she's just about to start kindergarten, and she is interested in the Pet Sematary. Louis finds himself interested in the Pet Sematary. Rachel, on the other hand, his wife, is a bit uncomfortable. She doesn't know, she's like, why are we here? I don't like this. Who's this creepy neighbour taking us to see a cemetery after meeting us? Who does that? Why are we going to see all these plaques everywhere dedicated to all these different cats and dogs and hamsters? This is sad. It's morbid. It's about death. I don't like it here. You know, she wants to go home. And we later learn a lot more about Rachel as the book progresses, but she doesn't like this. She doesn't want to go to the Pet Sematary. She doesn't want to see all these little headstones dedicated to pets who've been dead for 70 years. And she feels uncomfortable. Ellie doesn't seem affected at all, as you would expect with some children. There's a morbid fascination there. But she does say when she gets home about a cat, because she's got a little cat, Church, who she absolutely loves. His real name is Churchill, but I thought it was very interesting that his name was shortened to Church. The family surname is Creed. George Crandall sounds like Judge Crandall. There's a lot of religious imagery there, especially, you know, when you're looking at Christian theology. And Ellie sits on her bed and she ruminates and she says, well, hang on, I don't want Church to go to God. He's not God's cat, he's my cat. I don't want Church to die and go and live with God. He lives with me. So, you know, this indignant 6-year-old is beginning to think, hang on a minute, I don't accept this. Church is going to stay with me. Church isn't going to die. And there we have a bit more denial, except this is a child's denial, so we kind of gloss over it because it's like, well, yeah, kids, you know, accepting death, it'll take a long time for them to do that. He's not God's cat, he's my cat, is what she says. And for me, that started the ball rolling on where we see ourselves in the universe. Where do we fit? And we have, you know, the religion and faith, the imagery, and also Louis does discuss it with his daughter as well. The afterlife. Is there an afterlife? Do you think that the moment you die, it's over, you know, there's nothing, there's just the void. Do you go to an afterlife? And it starts to reflect on all the different beliefs that people have around the world about what happens when you die. What is this life? Is this your only life, or is this one of many lives? So the novel also, by going to the Pet Sematary, we're looking at how these animals have been buried ceremoniously, and it really reminds us of the tradition of burial historically. You know, anthropologists will tell you all about burials going back to cavemen. You know, burying the dead, it's a mark of permanence, it's a mark of respect, it's what humans do. And especially when people have in the past, rather than worship deities, they've worshipped ancestors. The burial is a way to honour them. So seeing this cemetery and the pets being buried in this kind of morbid way, how do the children know what to do? How do they do it so carefully, and they know to make the little headstones, and they know to make the little graves? Why do they care so much? And it just goes to show that the thought of burying the dead and the funeral procession and how we mourn is something that we have done for millennia. It's something that is inherent. These children know what to do. And George Crandall actually comments about halfway through the book, maybe a little bit earlier. He's an 84-year-old man, and he doesn't look like an 84-year-old man. So Louis is interested to speak to George and hear about his experiences. But at the same time, I feel Louis was a little bit suspicious of Judd, because it's like, this man is pushing 85. How is he so agile and fit, and nothing seems too much trouble for him? And for me, reading it, I thought, oh, is there some kind of like magic thing up in the hill, you know, where the Pet Sematary is? Is there something that makes you kind of live longer than you're supposed to? I was close. But Judd Crandall comments on how children are not as open to the acceptance of death as they might have been earlier in the 20th century. And they talk about, you know, time before vaccines for children, time before life-saving surgery. There was a time in human history where we had to accept that if you had 5 brothers and sisters, 3 of them might die before they're 5. We had to accept that as part of life. You know, women would die in childbirth, children would die in infancy, children would die before they reached the age of 10. It was a fact of life. And dying in old age is still a fact of life. They talk about there's 2 guarantees. You are born and you die. However, nobody ever talks about dying. And Judd Crandall comments on how on the television they focus on the other thing. So he's talking about the prevalence of sex on telly, but the decline of death on telly. And how, I mean, I don't think he outright says it, but he kind of implies that's not a good thing. That one of the things that we know is a certainty in life is that one day we are going to die. And Judd Crandall believes that these children of today, which is in the 80s in the book, are being unnecessarily shielded from that. It's part of life. And that moves us on to Rachel, Louis' wife, Ellie Engage's mother. Rachel is not comfortable with death, and she doesn't like the kids asking questions about death. She doesn't want to talk about death. And we learn about Rachel throughout the novel that she has had a bad experience of death when her sister, Zelda, had spinal meningitis. And she was kept away at the back of the house like the family's dirty secret, while they cared for her and gave her painkillers and just helped her live with this condition. You know, nursing her basically in the last months or years of her life. And Rachel has never got over that. and it was something that was very hush hush. So Rachel, as an adult, doesn't do funerals. Going to a funeral would be accepting that death happens, but Rachel hasn't. She has not done that in her life. She hasn't accepted that death is a real thing, that death will happen, and she finds it really hard to even talk about it. And Louis, his knee-jerk reaction when the cat gets run over is to go along with Judd and Betty, the cat, not in the Pet Sematary, in the bit of land behind it, which is a ancient burial ground. Judd says, you know, does she love this cat, Louis? Because Louis is thinking, oh, what am I going to do? Ellie and the baby and Rachel are off in Chicago right now. They think the cat is alive. What am I going to do? And it was that point that you think, you know, when someone or something dies, you have a choice. Do you acknowledge the death, and do you say to your kids, oh, I'm really sorry, he's died, he's gone to heaven? Or do you see if there's a way that you can deceive them and, in the short term, protect the kid from pain and say, oh no, he's fine, he's fine. You bought another one from the pet shop that looks exactly the same. Or, in Louis's case, you go and bury the cat in the Micmac burial ground. And then you get Church Part 2, who is not quite the same. He looks the same, but you know he's come from somewhere strange. And he's not the family cat anymore, certainly not what he was. Louis had two choices there. Oh, you know, accept it or deny it. And he denied it. So that is a recurring theme throughout the novel. It's the denial. It's denial of the facts. It's denial of the truth. And we as readers are also sucked into the denial. And I'll get into that. So from the start, we have been presented with the road being dangerous. And I don't know about you, but that didn't immediately occur to me as the road's going to have something to do with the family. Maybe the cat, but I didn't think about anyone else. So there's the road. Then, of course, there's the incident at the hospital where the young jogger dies. Tragic accident. So there we have death again in our faces. And there is a bit where Louis goes to bed at night after dealing with that at the hospital. Now, he's a doctor. He has seen people die, and he knows he has never, to his knowledge, seen a soul leave a body and pass into another realm. He has never seen that happen, and he doesn't really believe that there is a soul there and there is an afterlife. So Louis just has a lot of denial about different things, some more rational than others. And he can deny that there's a soul in the body because he hasn't seen it. But he can't, and he also then goes on to deny things that are very much real and have very much happened. So the bit where Louis goes to sleep and the guy who's died, this jogger, Pasco, visits him in what first appears a dream. And he, in black and white, it's right there in the book, Pasco says, your destruction and the destruction of all you love is very near. It's black and white. It's even more clear than Marley turning up and telling Scrooge, you're going to be visited by these ghosts. It's just Pasco saying this is what's going to happen. So there we have it in black and white. This is going to happen. And what does Louis do? He denies it. The horrifying bit about the vision with Pasco is that we follow Pasco with Louis up to the burial ground, and we think, I don't know about you, but I thought it was a dream just as much as Louis did. And then it's horrifying when Louis wakes up and sees that he's got all the twigs and the mud on his feet. Was it a dream? Was it a premonition? Did he genuinely go for a walk with Pasco? I mean, we can deny it, but his feet are dirty. So, you know, but there it is in black and white. Something terrible is going to happen to you and those you love. And yet we still keep reading, because I don't know about you, at that point I didn't think, oh, something really bad's going to happen to the kids. I'm going to carry on reading to find out what it is. That is not why I carried on reading. I carried on reading because I believed that, oh no, it'll just be a warning. They'll overcome it somehow. There'll be an escape. Now, I've read The Shining, and yes, that was horror, and bad things happen to good people. But, you know, they get away. Dad doesn't get away, but wife and son get away. So, it doesn't always happen. You think, oh no, it's alright, he might be able to save his family. Because in some horror stories, that's what happens. So at this point, I didn't think, oh, I'm going to keep reading because I want to find out how these children die. That is not what occurred to me. I just thought, it's just a warning, scary things will happen, and they will be able to get away from it all. That is what I believed. That is what I told myself. We are also told all along that Gage is in peril. So we have the bit where, so Gage is the toddler. He's the little guy. We have the bit where Louis is coming up the stairs with Gage in his arms, and then he is just overcome with a sense of dread, with a sense of foreboding, like something horrible is going to happen. He clutches his child. And we're not told what that is. We're not told what the cause of it is. At this point, it could be a haunted house situation. We don't know. But that's not the last thing. So, from there, Gage's peril. There's obviously the road, still outside, still with no fence. But we don't accept that anything will come of that. Also, the cat's been hit by a truck. We're not going to then think the toddler's going to get hit by a truck too. Gage, he has a fever at one point. Fevers, as you know, have killed children in the past. In some rare circumstances, they do today. Fever. He's choking severely on his own vomit. I think that's called edema. But it happens to drunk rock stars. It happens to people who've had, you know, one too many out in the nightclub. It happens to this toddler who is throwing up and choking on his own vomit. And his mum is screaming and she's like, help him, you know, please, he's choking. Louis is a doctor. He's like, it's nothing to worry about. It's fine. It's nothing. I see this all the time. And that's not him being an arsehole. That's just him being exposed to matters of life and death a lot more than Rachel is. We also have Gage he doesn't choke on a marble. He swallows a marble. Louis finds it in his poo. And then he lectures his 6-year-old and says, Gage could have choked on that. You need to tidy up your marbles because your baby brother will swallow them. All these things we know. We know what toddlers will do. We know that things should be kept from children and babies so they don't choke on them. But we still don't accept that anything will happen to Gage. We don't accept it. He's a toddler. So I don't know about you, but when we got to that chapter where we find out that Gage did run into the road and he was hit by a truck, I don't know about you, but I sincerely felt I didn't see that coming. Which is all part of the denial. We are in denial just as much as Rachel and Louis are in denial. We learn about other people through Judd Crandall who have also been in denial and buried people in the Micmac burial ground. And to me, that was the point in the novel I thought, wow, I have been just as much in denial as the characters have. And I thought that was just genius storytelling. He has told us from the beginning, bad things are going to happen, that road is dangerous, this child keeps getting ill and hurting himself and swallowing marbles. Not Ellie. Ellie doesn't seem to have anything seriously wrong, but Gage does. And yet, for me, I didn't see that. I didn't want to see that. More importantly, I didn't want to see that. So I just kept going, kept reading the book. And he knows we're in denial. King knows we're in denial at this point, because as they're processing the death and the funeral and everything, he then shows us a sequence. It starts a chapter saying, you know, none of this happened. Gage grew up. Gage got a scholarship. He went to university. Yeah, he went out with a girl who Rachel didn't really approve of, but Gage was alive. And he grew up into a man, and he achieved all the things his parents wanted him to. We go along with it. We read it. We accept. We're like, oh yeah, okay, Gage is going to be fine. It didn't really happen. Louis has had visions before. Maybe this was just a vision. Maybe Louis was just feeling the worst and worrying about the road. Maybe it was in his subconscious. No, it actually happens. And King takes us on that little period of denial there, where we're like, oh, maybe Gage is okay. Maybe none of this does happen. Because he knows we haven't accepted it. We won't accept it. How often does that happen in a book? How often does a toddler get hit by a truck and they write about it? You know, awful things happen to innocent people every single day. Children die every day still. You know, we have all these medical and scientific advancements. We have nuclear weapons, but we don't have a cure for some children's illnesses. Yet we still won't accept it. So Gage's death, and then that period where Louis will not accept it, if you read that, chances are you will have completely sympathised. If you read that and you are a parent, you will have been there with him, because that is the unimaginable. You couldn't even entertain the thought. And King knows this, and he knows we have bought into the characters, we have bought into the story. We do not want this to happen. But when we read books, we are not in control over the fate of the characters. That's the author's job. And their fate had been decided. We had been told bad things are going to happen, but we wouldn't accept it. So there we are. We deny ourselves the truth. The Micmac burial ground is, in a way, the embodiment of denial. You take things there to bury them, and you bury them, and you bury them, but they resurface. And what you deny there keeps resurfacing, and each time it resurfaces, it's something worse than it was. So Rachel, her denial of Zelda's death, Zelda reappears to her in nightmares, and Zelda is far worse than she was when she was dying of spinal meningitis as a 10-year-old child. Zelda has become a monster. She's become a creature in Rachel's worst nightmare because Rachel denied it. Rachel wouldn't accept that Zelda had died. And I thought that was really clever, how the Micmac burial ground is where we go to deny death. It's where we go to deny it to ourselves, as well as to deny it to the people that we supposedly love and care about. The instance where there was the man who Judd Crandall knew in the 40s, whose son had died at 17 years old. Such an injustice. You know, parents feeling that other people have decided the fate of their children. Parents who personally did not sign up for World War II, but their son had to go. And you understand the father's anguish. You understand why he took his son's body up to the burial ground. You completely understand. It's completely rational at this point. You are like, well, yeah, I mean, who am I to judge? What would I have done in that situation? You don't know because you're not in that situation. But Louis finds himself in that situation, and he does the same thing, because each time you do it, you deny yourself again. You think, it won't be as bad as what happened to that lad. Louis is like, well, Gage has only recently died. He's just there in the funeral home. He only died a couple of days ago. So if we bring him back now, he's not going to be as bad as he was. And even if he is, I'll still love him. You know, these are the promises Louis makes to himself. And then you can sympathise with the father of the 17-year-old who came back worse than he was, but the father was like, but he's my problem. You know, he's not bothering anybody, just let him live. And that is something else that Judge Crandall will say is, you bought it, now you have to pay for it. These are things that you have committed to. And going back to Judge Crandall, there is a ongoing kind of theme about this, you bought it, you paid for it, but also the secret of the Micmac burial ground is how they feel this morbid compulsion to tell other people about it. And then people spread the secret. And then the Micmac burial ground is used because whatever lingers there, whatever dark entities or demons or whatever you want to call it, wants people to tell each other, oh, you can do this. So that in their most vulnerable moments of grief, they will do something crazed and they will bury their dead in that burial ground. And in the stories that Judge Crandall tells Louis, eventually, after being a bit secretive about it, we find out that when these people or things do come back, they are changed in a way where they are essentially just a mouthpiece for something far worse than death. So the young man who comes back, the one who's killed in World War II, he only remembers the bad stuff about people, and it's seen as a way to divide them and to break up their friendships and their loyalty to each other. He focuses on things like, oh, did you know that your best friend blah 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 slept with your wife? Did you know that he did this? Did you know that he committed fraud? You know, all these people that you think are your friends, this reanimated dead boy is dishing out the dirt, and they don't mention any of the good things. And if they do use any familiar language or references, it's purely to manipulate you. So when Gage does come back, it is with purpose, and it's not coming back to see his mum and dad and live a happy life. He's coming back because he's somebody else's puppet. And the bit where he comes back and deliberately takes the scalpel, he knows what he's doing. Also, we haven't worried about that happening because all the cat has done, the cat who comes back, all he's done is kill birds and rats and stuff. Well, isn't that what cats do anyway? Aren't cats a force of destruction on the natural world? We don't think anything of it. But then when Gage does it, we're like, oh, everyone who comes back seems to be some kind of puppet. And we know bad things are going to happen. We finally accept that bad things are going to happen. So I thought it was really clever how King did that. He told us all along, this is what's going to happen. We denied it to ourselves. We joined the characters in with the denial. Rachel with her denial of death. She still denies death. And that's why she welcomes her son into her open arms, because the grief and the emotion and the vulnerability is completely manipulated there. And the bit where he says, Mummy, like, I mean, you can't get more evil than that. And that's why it's a horror book I just had to talk about, because the way it's done is genius. So there we are. Louis' descent into madness is another one that is inevitable, but somehow, I don't know about you, but I thought he was going to come out of it at some point. I thought with other people telling him, come on, you're not doing Ellie any justice here. Like, there's a child there who still needs you. You don't need to be dealing with any of this. Just go to your family and grieve together and raise your kid. You know, raise the kids you've got left. But Louis doesn't do that. We watch him descend into madness. At the same time, we still find ourselves sympathising with him for that, because we think, well, it's not his fault. He's just so, riddled with grief. And Louis, not only has he succumbed to the grief and the denial, but we feel there's something else in charge of him now. He's been let in on the secret. Whatever lingers in the Micmac burial ground has a hold on him. So he's not going to do anything rational or sensible. So we have to slowly watch his descent into madness. We have to slowly sit there and watch him make all the wrong choices. But we can't offer any solutions. We can't offer any answer there, because ultimately a power that they can't defeat and a power that they can't even control is in charge. There's a compulsion that can't be controlled. He goes up, crosses the deadfall, goes to the burial ground. He's compelled to do it. He's compelled by a force that we can't see, but we know the characters can feel. That to me is another fantastic example of horror writing, is how we think we've got it all figured out. We think we're in control. There could be something out there that is much stronger than you, much bigger than you, and there's nothing you can do about it. You have to live with caution. And I think that's what characters like Judd Crandall did manage to do. But eventually, the knowledge of the burial ground had to be shared. He couldn't take it to the grave, he couldn't keep it to himself. And he doesn't know why he told Louis, because he's not in control. I think that's what makes it all the more harrowing when Gage does die, because Louis and Rachel had their kids' lives all planned out. They mentioned the college funds that they'd already started saving for them, and they mentioned what universities they imagined them going to, what career Gage was going to have. They had it all planned out, and I feel King had the universe laughing at them there. But it's a good lesson for just how people are anyway. People love to think they're in control. People love to have it all planned out, the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 15 years. But life doesn't work like that. And rather than these characters focusing on living life and engaging with all life's variety and how unpredictable it is, they were trying to control it, and then were in denial when death came along. The hey ho let's go that is repeated all throughout the book, that wasn't as simple as King just liking the Ramones and sticking it in there. The hey ho let's go again is the compulsion to do these things without a reason why. And I had to get that out of my system because I haven't been able to read anything else since. I would be interested to know what you thought of the book and what themes or characters or images were conjured up in your head, and whether any of it resonated with you. So thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss out on future videos.